Give me a minute.
Or the kitchen.
Great. We are live. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this session where we are going to discuss the importance as we mark World Food Day. We're going to discuss a very important topic, and that is basically feeding our children. You know, in Kenya, we have made a lot of noise in regards to child nutrition because of its importance, because it has been shown to actually be protective. It actually protects the economy, productivity, and it also helps us reduce the increasing burden that we have in communicable and non-communicable diseases. So this year's World Food Day, the theme was to ensure that every child has access to safe and quality food. When you talk about safe and quality food, when it comes to children, nutrition does not start when we start feeding them the solids. It starts even before birth, way before birth. How is the mother taking care of herself during pregnancy? We call it the 1,000 days of life, whereby we are taking care of holistic nutrition to ensure that our babies develop well, our children are well, and they are actually reaching the milestones that they're supposed to avoid all these complications that have been associated with malnutrition. So tonight, I'm so delighted to have you join us as we dive into this conversation that literally shapes the future with my amazing co-host, that is Eunice Impiri. She is an amazing nutritionist and she has specialized in pediatric nutrition. So she has both hands-on practice and basically personal experience because she's also her mom herself. And she's going to help us understand this basic yet very complex, because some people still struggle. When you think about the statistic, what the data says about the child nutrition status in Kenya, of course, you will see that most parents are still struggling with feeding the babies. And when you talk about feeding, again, I want us to understand a very simple concept. You're not talking about feeding that we start from the spoon or on the glasses and plates and such. No, we are talking about feeding the child even before we start now giving them the solids and such. So according to the Kenya Demographic Health Survey, 26% of children under 5 in Kenya are stunted. This is a very it's still a big number considering the impacts and the dangers of stunting that we have actually observed, and we're going to talk about that a bit later. And you're having additionally 11% of our babies have been underweight. And when you talk about breastfeeding, I know we have sung, personally, I have sung a lot of songs about the importance of breastfeeding, and we have other nutritionists. We also have county nutritionists, we have private entities, we have associations, and we have other organizations that still insist on the benefits of breastfeeding, but we are still having women still not being able to practice breastfeeding. A good number of women are weaning the babies prematurely. That is even before they are 12 months, and a good number are not even able to sustain exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months. So in tonight's discussion, I want you to be very comfortable. If you have issues, if you have questions, if you have curiosity regarding breastfeeding, regarding complementary feeding, anything that has to do with feeding your child, feel free to leave it in the comment section, as we are going to be addressing that in the next 1 hour. So allow me to introduce, to allow my guest or my co-host to actually talk to us about who she is first. And then after that, she can tell us what she's bringing on the table tonight. And then after that, then we can move into how we can actually now start working on ensuring that mothers actually onboard breastfeeding, because they are aware. If you ask your neighbor, if you ask your friend who has a child or who is expectant, they have actually heard something about the benefits of exclusively breastfeeding their babies and continuous breastfeeding with effective complementary feeds up to 2 years. But a good number are still not doing that. With statistics, we are stuck at 61%. So Eunice, karibu sana, tuambie leo venye tutaenda, and introduce yourself so tukujue, so that you can familiarize yourself with us so that we can continue the conversation.
Thank you so much, Lillian. That was an amazing introduction. It's very important to know that we do not just want to be all talk and no action. My name is Eunice Simpiri Kilesi. I'm I'm a pediatric nutritionist. I am currently not doing much about clinical practice, but I've been teaching, I've been learning, I have been mothering. So I'm coming with experience together with clinical practice and knowledge. So tonight we're going to discuss what we commonly think that we know. We know that we're supposed to feed babies, but we need to know what are we going to do about it? How do we face the challenges? And how do we tackle the problems that we have every day? So with me here, I have a small guest who does not want to leave me, but I hope we are going to be together. He's not going to disturb anybody. And we're going to have a lovely discussion. So let's talk about breastfeeding. Let's talk about how to make sure that mothers have an easy time. How do we support families? How do we support the society? And let's see, after all this, who is benefiting? How is it beneficial to our economy? How is it beneficial to the household? So I am hoping that that is what we are going to get from this discussion tonight, that it's not just all talk, it's also what is the impact of what we've been talking about to everybody else. So thank you so much, Karibuni. Thank you so much for joining us.
Asante sana, Eunice, and your guest is very much welcome. Of course, it's understandable. It's also proof that you are doing a good job and you're practicing what you preach. It's very important. You know, some people want social proof. They want to see what a nutritionist telling us. How are their babies? How are they active? You see, it's good to have an active baby because it shows that their brain developed well and they actually worked. The mothers worked well to ensure that that happened. And that starts, as I say, that starts from way before conception. Like now, before we get into the nitty gritties of breastfeeding, can we talk about something that someone, actually, it was Kennedy the other day, he actually challenged us about the women or Kenyan women not taking pre-conception nutrition seriously. So what are some of the things that you have seen, you have actually experienced with clients, with friends, with relatives, when it comes to pre-conception nutrition and even pregnancy nutrition that actually affects outcomes and nutrition of the babies even after birth? You can just highlight some of the dangers that you have seen or the challenges, and then how you like to address that, and then we continue the conversation.
Thank you so much. I think as much as I'm passionate about babies, I'm also passionate about making them healthy. So let's not just have babies who are coming to the world to be at a seke, akuwe na mashida, and then they become expensive. The first thing that we need to take care of is the nutrition of the mother, even way before they start thinking about getting pregnant. So if your lifestyle has always been, of junk and all that, then you expect that you are not going to have very positive outcomes when it comes to pregnancy. But once you start taking care of yourself, even as a teenager, we start talking about hormones. We start talking about, right now we have a lot of problems with PCOS. Kumbe tuliambiwa it's normal to have painful periods. So if we started normalizing these conversations as early as possible so that we can understand our bodies, understand our hormones, understand that our decisions as early as preteen, like when you're a preteen, they're going to affect your lifelong outcomes. So I think that is my passion is about, let's talk about, in adolescence, can they understand their bodies? Can they understand what is happening to them? So yes, some very, very essential nutrients that I think some of us miss because, of ignorance, not necessarily because we do not have access, but because we do not have the access to information, and because our parents and our caregivers did not understand that these things were important at that time. So if we come to talk about our Kenyan culture, I don't know any other country. What I know is about Kenya, and the practice that I have had is the only time that people seek prenatal help or preconception nutrition is when they are seeking fertility treatments. Rarely do you see someone who is planning pregnancy, at least for the first when they get married. A lot of people rush to the contraception. They say that we want to wait, tunataka kwanza kujuana. So instead of actually looking at their fertility, the first thing that they rush to is contraception so that they can do family planning. I'm putting it in quotes because it's not the same thing. Family planning is not the same as contraception. So a lot of people contraception instead of, am I actually healthy to carry a pregnancy to term? Is my partner actually fertile? Do they have the proper sperm count? Do they even have the proper sperm motility and morphology? And we were saying that the sperm quality affects, the pregnancy, because if the sperm quality is low, then we are definitely going to have issues like miscarriages, spontaneous abortions, and we're going to have chromosomal issues. So if we made, like you said, we make enough noise to make sure that people know. We have a lot of mothers who are struggling with, like chromosomal abnormalities that could have been taken care of before pregnancy. If we took enough, if we took care of ourselves enough, if we took care of our hormones enough, then we wouldn't have problems with our chromosomes. So it's like I cannot talk enough about preconception nutrition. Go check, go get checked, check your hormones, check your partner, ndio usikue na hapo na blighted ovum, usianze kupata mimba ambayo haitaenda to term, because sometimes, maybe because of our African culture, most of the time we think that when fertility issues are there, it's only the husband, the woman that has issues. But we've come to realize that 40% of partners, the male partners, are the ones that usually have problems. So if we have, the burden is almost 50-50, then both of us need to get checked. Let's go, get our hormones checked. Let's get our nutrition. Let's get our supplements if that is the option, so that we do not get children with disabilities and abnormalities that could have been prevented. Of course, there are things that cannot be prevented, but if it's something that can be prevented, let's do that. Let's do that. So thank you.
Totally, I agree with you, Eunice. And also, maybe to just add to what you have said, unfortunately, people assume that nutrition is supposed to be an afterthought. People assume that my nutrition status should only matter when I'm pregnant. A good percentage of women, especially the women of reproductive age, we have seen the statistics. We are having a lot of deficiencies. We have both over and under nutrition. Where we are having macronutrient deficiency. We have women who are anemic. We have women who are obese and they are still of the reproductive age, and they don't think about, if I get pregnant, if I was to get pregnant today, what will happen to my baby? How will that impact or influence my baby? So I think one of the things that we should actually encourage women of reproductive age and even men, because as you have said, it's 50-50. If the sperm quality is poor, regardless of how good my nutrition is, the outcome will be negative. So we need to ensure that we're talking so much about pre-pregnancy nutrition, but that is a topic for another day. So let's get back now we have conceived the baby, we have given birth to the baby. Why should I be concerned about breastfeeding? Why should I want to breastfeed the baby? And before we talk about that, maybe I can highlight, because of that person who comes in and they are looking for pre-pregnancy nutrition, we need to take care of your iron, you need to take care of your folate, you need to take care of your calcium, your choline, your vitamins, minerals, and all that. So make sure that you look for a nutritionist or a dietitian and have a sit down with them to discuss about your nutrition habits, your lifestyle habits, including your alcohol, your smoking, your stress levels, and let them come up with a plan on how to actually support you regardless of the stage or whatever the habits that you have in life, or things that you need to change so that you can improve your baby's outcomes. Now, it is very necessary. We have conceived the baby, we have tumejichunga mpaka mimba imezaliwa. What next? What are some of the things? Why is it, before we start, because we know that the intended food for an infant from God is supposed to be breast milk. Why is it that mothers are still struggling with breastfeeding regardless of the number of information or the number of informants that are out there about the benefits, the need, the necessity of breastfeeding? Why is the struggle? Why are women of reproductive age, or even why are mothers, most of us, even nutritionists, haibagui struggle, haibagui ni ya kila mtu. Why the struggle? Why is it so bad? Eunice?
So I think number one, what we can talk about, even personally, I have seen that the struggles that we usually have is the gap between knowledge and practice. So yes, we have the information, but when it comes to practice, I think there's usually the gap of support. If you've given birth in the hospital, God amekubless, umeenda hosi, if you're lucky enough to get a facility where they actually, take you through the steps of lactation, how to support yourself, when to expect, the milk let down, how to, they prepare you psychologically that you're likely to get, cracked nipples if you do ABC. If you do not do proper latching and proper positioning, then you're likely to get problems with with mastitis. Sometimes maybe you can have engorged breasts. So if we have this, preparation, even the first ANC visit, we give all the information. We tell the mother that these are things that you're likely to face, and these are the options. Let's talk about difficulties that can arise from breastfeeding. Let's not just talk about the benefits. I think we've talked enough about the benefits, to the mother, to the society, to the child. We know that it is the best nutrition that the child can have. It is warm, it is readily available, it's the least expensive method. Psychologically, it binds the baby to the mother. So, the bond that the mother has with the child, then, the neurological development, it cannot be overlooked. So, despite talking about the importance of those things, let's talk about how do we make sure that then we maintain constant breastfeeding. If the mother is going to need extra help, if, they can be able to involve the partner, if there is a mother, if there is a caregiver, if this mother has access to a daycare, then how do we help sure that they get the support that they need? Another thing I think is because of the flooding of social media right now, I think there are a lot of mothers who are being told that formula-fed babies sleep better at night. I have heard that because I am a mother. I have had people say, mtoto wako hashibi, sometimes it's not, you don't have a signage posted on your face that you're a nutritionist. So people will try and give information even just freely. So there's a lot of flooding of information in social media and a lot of marketing from breast milk substitute companies that breast milk substitutes are better. So if we just made sure that before the mother, I know I'm not a sycophant of breastfeeding. I'm going to say I'm practical because there are some conditions that will necessitate you to use formula. But as long as you're physically able to, the child is not allergic to, haujafa, haujasafiri, breastfeeding is the best. So the thing that we can do is make sure that this mother understands all the options, because at the end of the day, we also know that there's something that is called autonomy. So ukiamua, sorry, excuse me, ukiamua kukosa ku breastfeed, then, but you've been given all the information, you've been given the benefits, the dangers of mixed feeding, or even the dangers of formula feeding. So I think the thing that we need to do is also be compassionate. If you find someone has made an error according to you, correct the information with passion and compassion, and then correct them according to give them the correct information, and don't do it with judgment. Usimwende na kifua, like it's not a law, like you have to breastfeed your child. I'm not going to get imprisoned because I decided to formula feed my baby. No, let's be practical, let's be compassionate, and let's look at people as human beings, as we can also make mistakes. So I'm going just to say that let's support. Kama mama amejifungua, if they're able to get us an extra help, instead ukuje kwa nyumba uanze kunishikia mtoto, nisaidie kufua, nisaidie kupika, help me, ndio nisikuwe na stress usiku nianze kuena I'm feeding, I need to hydrate, niweke hapo chupa ya maji, give me fruits, give me something that is going to because we say that breastfeeding mothers require 2 extra meals, that so that we can get the extra 500 kilocalories that they need per day. So can we get the support that we need instead of the support that we want to give? Yeah, I think I can say that. Najua nimesema mengi, but I think you
have said well. You have said really well, and I like the fact that you have touched on the support that is needed instead of what we are willing to offer. As you have said, it's very common in African society. Mtu anakuja kwako, anakuja ati amekuja kukutembelea, umetoka kuzaa. Now they think that, even if you're a paranoid mom like me, I will not want you to hold my baby before amalizana vaccination. So I think we need to maybe change the narrative kidogo and go back to what or how it used to happen kitambo, that is the best way that we can actually support our breastfeeding mom, because ikitu ni communal. You cannot expect a mom to be a superwoman, amezaa na kushughulikia na kupikia na nyonyesha, and she's doing all that. That will not work for you. Another thing I want to highlight is in the gaps in practice. Maybe I can leave a questions to the audience and ask you, if you were actually, if you're a mother, or if you have actually given birth, or if you know someone who has given birth, you can even ask them this question on our behalf. You can ask them if they were actually referred to a nutritionist when they went for their ANC visit, or during birth, or even after childbirth. Because I know for a fact that most facilities do not do that, especially in the ANC. And this goes to the private facilities. Of course, in the government facilities, regardless of the fact that we are really understaffed, there is a still kuna hiyo notion ama kuna hiyo idea that they will visit a nutritionist, or they will get mass education, which will not be the same. Maybe we can talk in the gaps of, because you're talking about support that is actually needed, and support that will actually make a difference. Why is it that we are comfortable with our mothers going to clinics and not being referred to nutritionists? Me, I can get away with lack of referral because I'm a nutritionist myself. My relatives can do the same, and I will still talk to them about the importance of nutrition. But what about that mother who does not understand the importance of nutrition? You start talking to them about it after the impacts of malnutrition, or the impacts of poor breastfeeding practices have actually settled in. Because you all know that if you don't start practicing well, and if you don't follow through with routines and ensure that you actually establish a routine for breastfeeding, your lactation or your production quantity and quality might actually be compromised in the downwards trajectory. So how are we going to actually address this? Because it's a serious problem. And it starts with awareness. Because if you go to the clinic today and it's a private facilities and you ask for a nutritionist, another mother goes in and asks for a nutritionist, another one goes in and asks for a nutritionist, they might be forced to actually now understand the importance, because they know, but they just ignore. So maybe Eunice, I don't know how you're going to highlight that and how we can bridge that gap, because that is support that is needed, that is not even offered. Because they will send you for the lab test, they will send you to a gyna, they will send you to the farm tech or the pharmacy department to get a lot of drugs if you are sick, or they will even prescribe you IFAS, but they will rarely send you a nutritionist who will actually help you understand why you need to take that IFAS, or how you're actually going to maximize the benefits. You can be taking something that we all know, you can take supplements and they're not helping you in any way. So how do we overcome that challenge? Eunice?
Sioni ka hiyo ni story ya ku overcome. Mimi naona tu the thing there is employ to nutritionist. If you have a private facility, instead of going through shortcuts, just employ someone who's going to offer those services, because hiyo haina shortcut, like hakuna negotiation unless you ni kama tu utaki, like what tunasemanga ni you just refusing, unless you're ignorant that the job of a nutritionist is going to be overlooked, because the job of a nutritionist, a doctor cannot do that, a pharmacist cannot do that. So hakuna shortcut, just on board a nutritionist, acha maisha.
Yeah, and maybe also, another thing that can actually help to get the nutritionist actually consulted is the mothers asking for those services. This is support they need that most of them are not aware. Like, I have engaged with women who, when I ask them, did you see a nutritionist, or why are you doing this? They like, me, I've never been told. And if you ask them, or if you check their clinic book, they have been attending ANC regularly kabisa, hata wamekuwa wakiattend hiyo CWC regularly without even missing a day, but they have never engaged with a nutritionist. And it's quite common, because mothers assume that, oh my God, if I go to public facilities, nitapanga line, nitachoka, it's not worth my time, I have some money to spare. People should actually be willing to ask for the quality of the services that they're actually paying for. But unfortunately, if they are not aware, that is why I say that if you went to ANC and you were referred to a nutritionist during any of your ANC visit, and it's not because that, most of them will be referred only if they are malnourished. like malnutrition is share setting. And we know for a fact that once that is already established, the impacts of are already maybe settling in, that the dangers are already been cooked up. So avoiding all this, maybe we can, I don't know, we can look for an angle where we can engage our moms more on the importance of addressing, and also that support ukishaza, the initial, like the 1 hour the baby friendly health initiatives for supporting breastfeeding, or the hospital and community initiatives, those ones where the baby is supposed to be latched on. Like where I gave birth, no one had the time. Like I was so tired, and then I asked them, why can't you bring me the baby? They were like, oh, the nurse is taking care of them. I was like, why not bring me my baby? Wakaanza kusema niko na kierere, because they were like, this is not common, this does not happen here. So, and it's quite unfortunate because it's a level 4 facility in Nairobi, and Nairobi is a capital. So you can imagine if that is happening in Nairobi, how terrible the situation is in other facilities huko ndani. So I think there's a lot of gaps in awareness on the importance of these services for moms. And maybe that's why another angle that we need to look at it, because if the mom leaves the hospital without understanding how to support, if you tell the mother the benefits, and you're not teaching them how to support that breastfeeding, how to make sure they sustain it, and how to continue with it, all that, they might not be able to actually do it. So I think one of the gaps, of course, apart from employing nutritionists, as we cover that gap, we need to also ensure that our women understand why they need to access nutrition services. And yeah, this will need a lot of championing from nutrition professionals all over, not just in Kenya, all over the country, in the continent and such, because it is like a continental problem where we are having nutrition being like a support service in health, which is quite unfortunate. But that was not the discussion for tonight. So let's continue with the conversation. So, because tonight we are talking about nourishing our children, making sure that we are intentional about feeding practices so that we can make sure that we prevent and we promote the benefits and the optimal nutrition in our children. Because as I said when we started, I say that it actually promotes productivity in our generation, because it reduces the occurrences of diseases later on in life. It ensures optimal brain functionality. So what we wanakuwa chap chap, people are also making sure that they are in sync with the development and all that. So now, Eunice, we want to talk about just a minute. We want to talk about optimal complementary feeds, because before we get to the feeds, why do we insist on the first 180 days? Why are we telling mothers to breastfeed our babies for the first 6 months? Because without any other feed, even water, because you will tell the mom that and they'll be like, wa shushu yangu aliniambia mtoto hawezi kaa bila kukunywa maji, I have to give my baby water. Shushu yangu aliniambia mtoto hawezi shiba na matiti ya kunyonya peke yake, lazima nimpe chakula, nimpe uji. Like I'm in a group where women actually argue with the fact that unawambia mtoto ameshiba, and hii notion ya ati breastfed baby are smaller, and the formula for that is infertile obesity. We are seeing the projections, we are seeing the statistics already. The inakuja inakam vibaya sana, and we are still having women, and the modern women and the educated woman still believing that a bigger baby or an obese baby is a cute and a healthy baby. So why do we insist on breastfeeding alone? In ukiweka hizo zote, ukiweka maneno ya ya obesity, ukiweka maneno ya gut functionality, safety and all that, why is it important for mothers to listen to us on supporting, promoting, and making sure they do exclusive breastfeeding at least for the first 6 months of life? Eunice? Hello? Is my internet?
Lillian, I lost you some time back. So you so it has the balance of energy, protein, vitamins, and minerals. It contains antibodies that usually protect the baby against infections that are usually very common in the early. Also promotes growth and development. So reduce the risk of undernutrition. Introduce other foods. Then we start loading the baby's digestive system with other foods. We introduce bacteria that are likely going to cause infections in the gut. And we are going to increase the costs of treatments, undernutrition. We are going to get undernutrition because other foods are going to interfere with the absorption and also the breastfeeding. So if you start introducing other foods, we definitely the competition. So that's it. Like it's together. Hello, Lillian, are we together?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Tuko pamoja. Eunice. Yes, we are. I can hear you. Okay. Eunice, unanisikia? Now, maybe what I wanted Eunice to highlight. Unanipata? Okay. It is well. Technology, technology network connectivity in Kenya is still a problem. And we are in 2025, and we are having a whole Ministry of ICT and Communication to ensure that that does not happen. But the way things are run in our dear 254, but it shall be well. It shall be well. Now, what I wanted to highlight, or you need to highlight about why we insist on exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months, is because despite the fact that people actually come up with the idea with the defense mechanism that our grandparents, our mothers, they gave us uji when we were 3 days old and we survived. Yo, we are getting weaker we are getting weaker as a creation. Like the human population is getting weaker. That's a sad fact because of certain exposures that were not there with our grandparents, and they were still breastfeeding. They were breastfeeding even longer. Like it was a norm for you to find a mother breastfeeding a 5-year-old, a 7-year-old, or even an 8-year-old. Currently, if you find a woman breastfeeding for 5 years, people get shocked. Huh? Ananyanya akiwa anaenda shule na anarudi. Like I remember my mom's sister, she used to go to school and then she comes back breastfeeding. Like tulizaliwa na yeye. Mimi ni mama yangu aliniachisha because of other issues. But sasa yeye her small sister, like the last born, alikuwa anaenda shule anakuja kunyonya. So yes, people used to breastfeed longer. That is why some of them got the advantages of breastfeeding. But that does not mean that, and they also didn't know, research was not there. There was nothing like gut health. There was nothing like bacteria. There was nothing like obesity. It was not common for you to find an obese child. It was rare for you to find a fat baby in the African setups. In fact, I think that is why most people were trying so much to make their babies fat, because it was not a common occurrence. Now we have the data, we have the findings, we have the research, and we have a lot of obesity and a lot of complications, including ADHD, including other depression and psychosocial disorders in our babies. So, how do we overcome that? We overcome that by practicing exclusive breastfeeding. Both UNICEF and WHO, please give me my phone. Please give me my phone. Both UNICEF and World Health Organizations have actually showed us very clear data on the same. So we need to make sure that we are supporting our babies on that. It is very necessary. We cannot ignore that fact. We cannot. There's no way that you can go outside there and you start like undermining exclusive breastfeeding. And I know for most moms who think that it's so hard, they think that, oh, momina ananipigia kelele, oh, momina ananifanyia, should actually understand that, oh, I'm not in a position to. We actually block our minds to breastfeeding, and that will actually happen because the whole process is hormonal and it is mediated by hormones, which are mediated by feelings, by the way. That is why one of the things that our partners and our community should actually understand is the importance of emotional and psychosocial support for our pregnant and breastfeeding moms so that they can prepare for and support breastfeeding effectively to ensure that our infants get the most out of it. I don't know if Eunice is back, but it is well. So let's talk about, I hope that is understood, by the way, about why we need to or why we insist on exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months. And as we said, when we say exclusive, we mean that without any other feed, including water. Why do we say that? Because breast milk has enough water, it has enough proteins, it has enough carbohydrates, that is energy, it has enough fats and healthy fats, it has enough fiber, oligosaccharides, and such. It also has enough vitamins and minerals to support proper growth and development for the infant if the mom's nutrition is well taken care of. That is where breastfeeding support or breastfeeding nutrition support comes in for the mother. When the mother is being taken care of, and by being taken care of, it does not mean that you're overeating. No, it means that you're eating right, nourishing your body well, hydrating well, sleeping right, and all that to ensure that you meet all the conditions that are necessary for you to produce enough quality breast milk for your baby. That is very, very important. And our guest is back. Eunice, karibu sana. Are we together? Tuko pamoja?
Can you hear me? I think I'm struggling somewhere here with network. Am I audible now?
Yes, you're audible, Eunice.
Lillian?
Yes, you're audible. You're audible. I can hear you loud and clear. Pole sana for that. We said we want
Okay, so
Kenya
I'm
to
sorry I
develop
left
such
you
a
at the importance of breastfeeding and why we need exclusive breastfeeding, and I've heard because sorry?
saying Kenya is still not
Yes, you've
developed.
explained well that we are.
Okay, Eunice, kama tuko pamoja, we can continue.
Okay.
If you have any questions for the speaker.
Eunice, kama tuko pamoja, we can continue.
Okay, as we wait for my speaker or for my co-host, if you have any question for us, make sure that you feel free to leave that in the comment section. We are going to be addressing that as well. And if you have any comments, because we are the ones in practice on the ground. So if you have any comments, if you have any contributions to the discussion that we are having tonight, feel free to leave that as well in the comment section, and that will be appreciated. So as I was saying, I hope it's clear about the importance and why we insist on the benefits of breastfeeding. And as my guest comes in, I will just be introducing complementary feeding so that she can now talk to us about why it's so important and all that. So when you think about complementary feedings, what exactly is that? Most women actually confuse weaning and complementary feeding. When we talk about professionally, when we talk about weaning, we are just now getting rid of breast milk for the baby. Like the baby won't be feeding on breast milk anymore. That is winning. But you see, complementary feeding is now you introduce other foods to complement, not to work with, to complement breast milk. The foods are coming in to now cover the gaps of development that are created after the 6 months. Because now after the 6 months, the nutrient capacity or the nutrition or the nourishing ability of breast milk to the baby or to the infant, to the growing baby becomes inadequate and it becomes less. Now you are supposed to ensure that now you provide feeds and fluids and all that that actually going to support and complement breast milk to ensure that the baby's development and growth is continuous and effective. That is complementary feeding. It is not, people assume that now when you start complementary feeds, I am going to be feeding the baby during the day and then I breast milk at night because it is breast milk supporting the feeds. No, it is the other way. You're still supposed to breastfeed on demand, and I know it's impossible for women who are working. That is why when you are actually now breastfeeding the initial months, like umepewa hiyo off yako ya 3 months, we encourage that we power pump to make sure that our body increases our supply, that we can have extra for storage. When you have extra for storage during that, maybe the 3 or the first 6 months, then when you go to work, you continue with the pumping or you continue with the expressing to ensure that you still have extra starch so that your baby can still feed on during the day and they still get their other meals. I hope we are together. So the feeds actually come in to support or to complement the breast milk and not the other way around. That is why timely and is it strategic? You're supposed to introduce them and you make sure that, again, as you introduce them, you're also making sure that you're planning effectively to ensure that you meet the gaps in the different months, because a baby at 7 months, another one at 9 months, another one at 12 months, their needs will be totally different when it comes to the energy supply or the macros and the micronutrient supply from other feeds. But again, we need to remember at the back of our minds that yes, we are introducing feeds, but these feeds, we're introducing them to complement and support breast milk, not the other way around. Yes, my guest is back, Eunice. Okay, as we wait for her, kindly allow me to ask another question. And I hope you guys will be typing in the comment section so that sijiongeleshi because yeah, but it is well. So what are some of the misconceptions that you've had regarding complementary feeds? Yes, all will be well. All will be well. So I think before Eunice comes in, let me talk about the timing of complementary feeds and why it's very, very important. As I said, for the different stages of development, a baby at 7 months and another one at 10 months or even 12 months, they have different nutrient demands or nutrient needs to support their growth development. Also, in different stages of development, at 6 months, they're trying to sit, at 10 months, they're trying to maybe crawl and even try and stand up and move. Now, that will mean that there are macros and the micronutrients. Macros are basically the foods with the big supply of energy, kina protein, kina carbohydrates, kina fats. When you talk about kina protein and carbohydrates, kina protein ni kama kina nyama, kina kamande. These are protein sources, foods that actually supply your body with proteins, nuts, and all that. When we talk about carbohydrates, you're talking about vegetables, you're talking about fruits, you're talking about the starchy vegetables, like the non-starchy ones, the starchy and non-starchy ones. Like you're thinking about potatoes, you're thinking about, and in Kenya we have a habit of giving, tunaintroducing watu wetu chakula na tunampea malenge, tunampea ndizi na tunampea waru and spinach. That is our baby, that is what our baby is going to feed. Alafu tunaimash, tunaimwagia maziwa, tunapea mtoto anakula. And then we end up with a lot of babies with deficiency when it comes to vitamin A. We end up with deficiency when it comes to vitamin D, rickets and all that. We end up with babies with deficiency when it comes to developmental, like unapata uko na protein, energy, malnutrition, kwash and marasmus and all that. Mama anasema mimi napeanga mtoto wangu chakula, sijui kwa nini hana afya mzuri. You see, that is the misconception that we have about feeding our babies, that we can only feed babies specific and certain types of food. Wengine wetu tunawapea tu uji, wengine tunawapea tu uji, wengine tunawapea maziwa. Like, we don't believe in any other feeds for our baby, and that is quite unfortunate, because that is not holistic feeding. When you think about complementary feeds, you want to introduce your baby hata kama ni hiyo spoons mbili na nakula, because again, when you're introducing feeds, you're not going to start giving them a bowl or a whole cup of foods. No, you introduce, tumesema tunanyonya, mtu ananyonya on demand, nasile amenyonya mwananyonya imezidi, unampea ka solid. We want to make sure that the consistency is also taken care of because we're also trying to make sure that we develop all these, the jaws, the mastication, kutafuna, and all that. So if you feed your baby, because I met a woman who was like, now she was fine blending the foods for her baby, and the baby was 1 year 6 months, and the baby could not even take any solids. Akimpewa solids, gag reflux, anatapika. They cannot even semi-solid. Kama sio like finely blended, and the baby of course was struggling with anemia and such. The food is not finely blended, the baby cannot swallow. This happens when we don't watch the consistency of the foods. So ukianza kupea mtoto chakula, there are things that you must consider. The first thing is the quantities, the composition, and the consistency. How is this food actually going to blending in their developmental stages? Kama ni after 6 months, unaanza na tujiko tuwili, you make sure it's soft. Do not give babies things that are going to choke them, and then usimpe tu kijiko, hiyo kijiko umesema ni vijiko mbili tu, unamtotea vijiko mbili, unampea tu, unamwachia. No, allow the baby to feed slowly. Make sure the food has the different composition. Hata kama una blend chakula, make sure at least, alafu mpe variety. Unaona, hata ukipewa chakula moja, ukikula ugali na sukuma kila siku, kuna mtu akiweka status, Mungu ugali na sukuma, because I saw a status somewhere, mtu akisema ugali na sukuma daily, hata Mungu wengine wateseke, nibarikiwe kidogo. You see, when you eat the same type of foods every other day, you get bored. But you want to make sure that tunapea watoto wetu malenge, tunapea skuma, spinach, we don't even give them skuma, tunapea malenge, spinach, ndizi na carrot, alafu tunawekea maziwa, tuna blend na tunawapea. Ama tunachukua machungwa, tuna squeeze, tunaikamua kabisa. The baby will never even develop latching, kushika hizi skills, gripping skills, juu hajui hata sasa atashika nini, na kila kitu iko in liquid form. So we need to ensure that we are taking care of all these consistencies when we are introducing our complementary feeds. That is the only way that you're going to tackle malnutrition in children, because there's data to show that for most mothers, when we are breastfeeding, things are okay, but when you start introducing feeds, things go south. Now where you get like tu zimeenda vibaya, watoto wameharibikiwa, wanaanza kupata malnutrition kwa sababu we are feeding same types of foods, we're not taking care of the composition, we're not taking care of the consistencies, na tunawapea chakula zenye hazina enough energy, because the baby is active now, ameanza kutembea, ameanza kujaribu kumove, then you're still giving them fluids badala ya chakula. What will happen to that baby? They'll end up taking less nutrition, because akikunywa maji nyingi, tumbo inajaa, tumbo ikijaa anakula kidogo, na usahau bado. We are the same women who still believe that some mtoto wangu juu ameanza kukula na hizo na mimi najikata, kunyonya hanyonyi as much, so the baby will definitely struggle with malnutrition. So that is something we need to look into as mothers and as nutritionists as well, as when you're communicating the importance of malnutrition, you need to take care of that. And the misconception where we think that when we introduce foods early is the right thing, no, that needs to stop. Of course, there is data to show some, like, the importance of making sure that you get the cues for the baby to feed. Mtoto akianza kufuatilia chakula, akianza kulambalamba, unampea anaonja here and there, it's not the worst that can happen, but it does not mean that we are actually now allowing early introductions of feeds. Ensure that now you assess your baby's needs and then you do as needful. And we need to ensure that we complement and we continue with exclusive breastfeeding for the first 2 years. I know it's hard, but it gets easier. You know, after the 6 months, even after the first 6 weeks, Njeri Nyamaza, after the 6 weeks, sorry about that, after the 6 weeks, after breastfeeding, once you have actually established the routines and all that, it becomes easier. And after 6 months, it gets easier because now they know, wanajua kujishukulia, wanajua kujishikia. So it becomes even easier for you to breastfeed even at night. So it is actually recommended that we don't stop breastfeeding there unless actually advised otherwise. Maybe kama kuna shida, maybe you are reactive and there are issues with your counts and such, or the baby's counts, maybe if they advise otherwise. But if not, kindly let's continue with with breastfeeding up to the first 2 years, because it is recommended. It has actually been shown to have a lot of benefits. So, and as fathers and caregivers and the extended family, now, because I also wanted to discuss that, what role can fathers and other extended family play in supporting breastfeeding and feeding practices? Once after the 6 months, if you have been expressing or actually kukamua, kama umekuwa kukamua, you can leave. It's also good for them to bond with the babies because they cannot breastfeed, but you can express the breast milk and give your other relatives the opportunity to actually feed the baby, and you also take part in it. For the extended families and other relatives and such, it is also good to support, because breastfeeding is a whole expensive affair. Feeding njaa inakwanga ya breastfeeding ikwangi rahisi. That hunger can actually make someone eat everything. So if you know, or some people are not so good with actually asking for help. So anytime that you go for to visit a breastfeeding mom, be very thoughtful when it comes to the gifts that you're taking to them. Do not take them clothes. Do not take them unless they've told you to bring us clothes. We have normalized this culture of tunabeba strong war. Remember, this mother had, like, unless she told you she didn't buy for the baby enough during pregnancy or after memza, then you can take them clothes. But sometimes just give them some other support. You can take some food stuff. You can send them money, cash, to actually get the foods that they need. You can also give them information. If you come across this post and you read and it actually, and you understand, you can share it with the mom so that they can be able to understand on how to support and why it is important to continue with complementary breastfeeding and breastfeeding. Sorry. So how can we simplify complementary feeding to make it affordable and sustainable for low-income families? Complementary feeding does not have to be complicated, and as nutritionists, we actually do not recommend baby foods. I don't, because we usually advocate for the feeding of the various groups. We say the baby should feed at least 7 to 10 groups in a day. Hiyo ni on minimum 7, at least afike 10 to 14, that would be ideal, but akikosa asishuke chini ya 7. The same thing we actually advocate for families, but again, you see, in a family setup there might be other people who are struggling with other condition. You might be having someone who's struggling with food addiction, you might be having someone who's struggling with diabetes, another person struggling with maybe hypertension and such. So maybe a holistic, in a low income setup where you're not able to provide or menus and plans for everyone, it would be very advisable for you to have the baby in mind, because they're the ones who are developing. Make sure that your feeds actually are something that they can actually feed on. And when you're talking about this, kama ni nyama, hata kama kuna nyama ya 50 bob, you can mince that meat. And when you mince it, the baby can also be able to have that and some kidogo ugali. And then when you're feeding the baby, you also be patient. And one thing that we actually encourage to ensure that the babies are not left out, also to actually help us in continuing with the social aspect of food, let's feed together. Tukule pamoja na watoto, have your baby sit down with you, kula na yeye pole pole, ukikula unampea, ukikula unampea. So actually even help us to reduce the intake of unnecessary additives that we have been doing in foods. Because ukipikia mtoto wako, utaki mtoto wako akule unnecessary additives, you don't want them to have unnecessary salts, unnecessary sugars and all that. And when you're doing all these feeds, we need to make sure that, again, hii culture ya kupatiwa sukari, when you introduce the baby to sugars and to unnecessary feeds, you're actually culturing their taste buds and their preferences in life. I'm not saying that you make your baby's life boring, no, but the baby's life will be terrible, and utashindanga na infections, utashindanga na colds, utashindanga na flus every now and then because of unnecessary practices while complementary feeding your baby. So healthy practices are best, and majority of us in our household do not even practice varied balanced diets, not even the low income farmers, the low income families, even the ones that are actually able, the middle income, we still have a lot of challenges or a lack of awareness. And some people have the information, but they are still having excuses. Oh, leo nimechoka, wacha tukule noodles. Let's avoid doing all those to our babies. Mtoto mdogo hata hajajua hata metabolic system ijamaliza kugrow kidogo kidogo, ushaanza kumfeed noodles. Babies are being fed noodles for lunch every day. Kama si noodles ni chips ama mchele imekarangwa, and that's it. They are not even adding small avocado, hakuna hata omena, hakuna hata ka skuma here and there. Let's I still am a believer that quality and nutritious food in Kenya is not yet expensive. If you think about ukinunua noodles ni 70 bob. Hizo noodles unanunua 70 bob, ungenunua hata kama ni kagidheri, umtolee tumbosho, umtafunie mahindi na umpe na akula. Ama hata ununue ugali, kuna unga ya kupima, you can get unga ya kupima, get some skumama spinach at 20 bob, and then you do maybe an avocado and an egg or 2 eggs, na 70 bob itatosha. That is very practical for lunch. And if you're a family of 5, that utaongezea kidogo, because even the noodles for 70 bob will not have been sufficient. And it is important for us to be a bit realistic when you're complaining, because someone will complain, oh, I'm not in a position to actually afford quality meals for my family, what do I do? But they have a farm, they are farming, wako na chakula wanapeleka kwa market, yote wanajisahau. You take the good quality foods to the market, you take the ngwashi zote kwa market, unarudi na mkate. Now ungebakisha ngwashi kidogo kwa nyumba, you will not have needed to buy the bread, and that 60 shillings or that 70 shillings you could have bought something else. So let's be a bit realistic na tujipende kidogo as binadamu. Let's not, if you're farming, do not sell all your produce, because leave some for yourself and for your babies. It will be very good for the baby to have something like breast milk, or ngwashe that has been mashed in breast milk in the morning, alafu anakula. That will be very ideal. Ama anakula tu kidogo, anakunywa once they now get to maybe 12 months and above. All that is complementary feeding, with the mother still breastfeeding. As I have said, complementary feeds do not end at 6 months. Breastfeeding does not end at 6 months. We continue with breastfeeding up to 2 years. That is the recommended time for breastfeeding. So that is very important. And as we do that as professionals, we need to ensure that, like, we are taking up policy actions to protect and promote optimal child feeding practices nationally. One of the things that we can do, of course, is integration of the community mothers, the community setups, the community households. We can actually now take it up upon ourselves. If your facility is in a region, take it up, the community health unit, go and talk to mothers about the importance of complementary feeds. Have field days where you're talking to, engaging to mothers and such. And we need to have, of course, this does not come, I know I can say that, but it does not come overnight. So there's a lot of small advocacy, small campaigns, small awareness here and there that is needed to ensure that that is borrowed and actually taken up. So it is very important for us to be advocates of that. If we talk about why is it that we are not having nutrition integrated in the MCH or the A&C clinics effectively in these facilities, or even in the grassroots campaigns about maternal nutrition. We know how badly our situation is when it comes to maternal death and maternal anemia, or even the malnutrition status of women of reproductive age and all that. So we cannot ignore that, because that definitely affects outcomes of our babies. As Eunice said when she started, we have to make sure that we are holistic when it comes to taking care of our mothers and taking care of our babies. So that's, I don't know if we have any question. Eunice, yes. Rachel, please allow Eunice back. So if we have any questions, so that we can comment, and she can also give us some insights on what I have talked about. I've talked about a lot. And breastfeeding loves water. So for a child, Rachel is for a child who's 3 months, their mother have passed on and they cannot afford formula. When the mother cannot afford formula, you customize the locally available options that are there. We used to, but it's no longer recommended, so I will not recommend it. But there's that preparation of maybe goat milk, or even the cow milk, or even the camel milk, whatever milk is available, or whatever options are available. You customize it, and then you try and feed that to the baby until they're around 6 months. And then you ensure that, again, when you're doing that, you can supply, because that one does not come holistically with the other macronutrients. You make sure that the baby now is feeding other feeds. But that is not only recommended if the mother is passed on. As Eunice said, you have no right, you have no reason to actually deny your baby breast milk, and you're alive, you're well, you're healthy, and you're capable. So let's try and avoid doing all that. We no longer recommend the dilution or the use of that, because again, when it comes from the professional's mouth, people will actually say, "Oh, nutritionist said that I can actually now substitute my baby's milk with this kind of milk and all that." It's not recommended anymore. But in settings where it cannot be avoided, it is actually given. So yes, for that mother who passed on, the baby is 3 months and they cannot afford formula, then we can definitely localize or prepare or come up with other feeding options, because you're not going to starve the baby. We're not going to kill our babies. Wet feeding in Kenya, because of our screening and all that, it's a bit tricky unless it's hospitalized, which is not again done for the babies after discharge. Yes, the human banks in Pumwani, they are there, but they are for infants and the babies who are in the facilities. At the community, they are still yet to extend to the community levels. And that is one thing that we need to continue championing for, you know. Aha. Do I recommend we start dairy and dairy products, including infant formulas, as complementary at 6 months? Rachel, I said complementary feeding. You're not, in fact, you're not supposed to introduce dairy to a baby before they're 12 months, and other dairy products. They're still getting their milk supply from the breast milk. That is not recommended. So we do grains, we do starch, we do vegetables, we do the other. Okay, sawa sawa. We do all other food groups that we have. Kuna tubers. Tubers ni kina ndoma, kuna ngwashe, kina waru, kina cassava, mhogos and such. Kuna mboga, kuna mchele, mahindi they can't chew, but there's maize, there's ugali, there's also porridge. Porridge is part of grains. They can do legumes, kuna kamande, kuna kinanjahe, kuna beans, kuna matunda, all types of fruits, and all types of meats. That, and again, with proteins, you introduced only juu ya allergies. This session of complementary feeds is a bit wide. You cannot finish it in a day or in 1 hour. But when it comes to hizo feeds za kuintroduce, we do not recommend dairy because of allergens and the inability to, or they are delicate to tummy to digest that, and casein and all that. It is actually recommended that we withhold dairy, which is quite unfortunate because in Kenya we know how that goes. But I did it, and I'm telling you, it is very possible. It is very possible to do that for your baby. If you have to do it, you can give them mala pre-digested. It's not avoiding dairy, because if they're intolerant, and we thank God babies have the lactase to, so not so many babies are intolerant to milk. But if your baby is intolerant, you will know the gas and all that, the reactions will be there. But you can try and give them something like maybe pre-digested milk, that is basically maybe mala, or even the natural yogurt without sugar. But it is highly recommended that you avoid those until they are 12 months. Yes, Rachel, I understand. Or Eunice, you can give us more insights even in the comment section. I will read it out loud. Eunice? Now, what would I recommend in that? Yes, you can help me in the comment section. So what would you recommend in that case? Cow's milk or goat milk? I have said we work with what is available if they can access. They say goat milk is lesser, so yes, or even camel, but we work with what is available. If they cannot afford formula, then they might, goat milk is not, again, the problem with introducing feeds or buying locally foods in the baby, goat milk can be expensive. It can be a bit costly if you get on the one that is actually been assessed safety and all that. But I understand in most communities they just milk directly from the goat and then on a dilute and a pewa. If that is possible, that can work. But if it's not possible, then we work with what is available. We just make sure that we customize their plans to ensure that the baby is well fed and they are supplied with all the necessary nutrients, including the micros and the macros, like vitamins, matunda, minerals, boga, hizo tubers, hizo protein to maharagwe and all that. You just customize. Hata unaweza kuwa unamblendia, unamtengenezea kauji kadogo hivi so that they can take, and then you make sure that you give them water, because now you've introduced other feeds and you watch on their gut. Wasipasafe malnutrition. Yeah. Yeah, Eunice has said the thing with the other types of milk that is basically the cow is that it makes the baby fuller for longer because of the fat content, but it has less nutritional value. So things come iron. So when you're customizing that feeds for that child, you have to make sure that you are taking care of all their demands, all their needs, both the big nutrition, that is the macros, and the small ones that we don't consider so much kama kina iron. Yeah. Yeah, great. Yeah, that is where we recommend. Eunice has added, that is where we recommend we do other foods plus water, but in this case the mother is dead. So she cannot breastfeed. Yeah, so we take up the milk, because we dilute the milk, but we make sure the baby is getting other foods, because in this case the cow milk or even the goat milk. Okay, sawa sawa mama, nimeelewa. For 12 months, why not? Why not, Rachel? The safety has been established, but siasa ziko hapa nje that the UHT, the ultra heated treated milk is bad. Oh, the babies will get all that and all that. So tuende wakapewa watoto ng'ombe maziwa directly from the ng'ombes. The ng'ombes will give your babies aflatoxins, they will die. So it's good to ascertain safety before you feed your baby anything. Yeah? Of course, aflatoxins, of course, ya brucid imetoka kwa ng'ombe, but they have checks for safety and all that. So for 12 months, in as much as I know it's not easy to get the perfect milk or any other feed perfect kama breast milk hapo nje. It is almost impossible, because kutakuwa na concerns za toxicity, kutakuwa na concerns za composition, kutakuwa na concerns za everything, but we need to select what best works for the baby. Yeah, Rachel is saying, I think in milk dilution, it's important to get the ratio right, yes, and to note that the baby is also on multivitamin due to deficiencies. Yes, very important. Very important. But again, as I said, this needs to be customized. We need to, if that baby, the mother is the caregiver able to, and a lot of follow-up will be needed. This is where we work together with the CHPs in that area, the caregivers watu wanakuwa na follow you up, so that we ensure that the baby is well protected, because the chances or the probability of this baby getting malnourished, they are very, very much high. Of course, you are going to dilute. The baby is under 6 months. So yeah, we definitely have to dilute the goat milk and the cow milk. Whatever is available has to be diluted. But again, as I said, it is no longer recommended blanketly as it was in the past. So unless it's an urgent case or a specific case like this one, that is when we come in to customize to ensure the baby is feeding well. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Eunice is also adding that when raw milk is boiled properly, the safety is guaranteed, and not all caregivers can have access to pasteurized milk. That is true. That is true. That is very true. If you can ascertain the safety of the milk, why not? So yeah, there is a question: why do we always start with cereal-based foods at 6 months, while we know that the breast milk contains at least it contains all the food groups, not three? Most mothers start with refined cereals that could cause early malnutrition and micronutrient deficiencies. The misinformation and misconceptions that is out there, where we are having mothers wanapea watoto tu uji, na wakitoka kwa uji wanawapea matoke, malenge, spinach na waru, which causes a lot of deficiencies. By the time the baby is 12 months, ashaanza kupata mashida left, right, and center because of poor nutrient composition or profiling. So yeah, we need to avoid all this, and even the cereals. These are reserved. I'm not against westernization or urbanization or making your life easy. No, I'm not against that, but it is actually recommended that we do feeds that are whole for our babies. If you can cook for the baby, why not? And as a mother, you want the best for your baby. I'm sure you can find time to cook for your baby. That is why me, I actually recommend family foods for the baby. But again, some people cook foods badly, wanajaza mafuta, wanajaza kila kitu, so the baby cannot. Hata zichotewa kidogo akule. So depending on how well you prepare and you actually handle your feeds, you can do family foods. Hii maneno ya kupeana cereals, unapeana tu one specific type of food. Hata kama ni protein tu peke yake unapeana, they lack energy, they lack other macronutrients and other vitamins and minerals, and they will still experience deficiencies. So we need to be as holistic as we can be with our babies, and let's remember that with complementary feeds, they are supporting breast milk, not the other way around. So that baby should continue breastfeeding on demand until they are 12 months, or at least 24 months if possible. Yeah, great. Yeah. So Unisa said family foods that are safely prepared are the best complementary foods that are suitable for responsive feeding. They're also good for developing social cues, easy like grappy, kushikilia. I don't know why that word is disappearing, but it is disappearing. And it also makes the baby enjoy their food. Grasping, yeah, grasping. So it makes it easier for the baby to. And these are skills that they're developing to chew. And Pia, they look forward to meal times. And when you're having your baby, you don't argue during meal times because they are also a bit sensitive. One thing that most of us actually ignore, we ignore the sensitivity of these little creatures. They are very sensitive. So do not argue, do not fight, do not quarrel. Let it be interesting so they can actually look forward to meal times. Yeah, the fine motor skills. That is the word. Any other question? Or any other question that I have not addressed? Great. Great, great, great. So thank you so much for joining me. My co-host for the night had some technical hiccups, but she has been very helpful in the comment section. So as we marked World Food Day last week, but the country was going through some issues here and there, but that is life. We need to remember that the right to food is not just about access, it's about nutrition, dignity, and opportunity. And every child deserves to access quality nutrition. We don't just feed to fill the tummies. Our focus should be to nourish and maintain proper growth and development for our babies from the word go. The word go, it means from preconception all the way through pregnancy to breastfeeding and to complementary feeds, and even after weaning, so that you can actually culture habits that are going to actually help us reduce the increasing incidences of non-communicable diseases in our country, which is directly linked to poor child nutrition status in our region. And we also have there's that the type 5 diabetes that is actually directly linked to malnutrition, even that has actually been classified as the diabetes of malnourished people or malnourished children. The best way to start preventing such conditions and such occurrences and such statistics is when the baby is small. So let's do better. Let's purpose to be better parents, better professionals. When you find out or when you discover that you want to be pregnant, when you think you're ready for pregnancy, let's also promote the importance of planning for pregnancy so that you can start taking care of our nutrition. Or let's also advocate for blanket proper nutrition for women of reproductive age who can get pregnant anytime, because most are actually caught there. So your blanket proper good nutrition can actually help pregnancy outcomes. And when it comes to breastfeeding, let's continue championing for exclusive breastfeeding together with effective complementary feeds even up to 2 years. So baby watoto wanyonye, kunyonya mtoto itakumaliza nguvu. Provided you're eating well, you're hydrating enough, you will actually be able to produce enough quality milk for the baby, na hautakonda sana as people actually assume. Mtu anasemanga oh, mtu ananinyonya na konda sana. Ukikula vizuri ita maintain, ita sustain. So thank you so much for joining us. Let's remember to take care of our babies. Let's also advocate for men to support our babies, our breastfeeding mothers, and also be part of taking care of their children, because watu wa siku hizi wanasema there's a lot of, the society has changed a lot. Kitambo ilikuwa a woman's responsibility to take care of the baby, but she was not alone. It was a communal affair where she had other women, she had her mother-in-law, she had her sisters-in-law, she had everyone who came together to ensure that the baby was well taken care of together with herself. But everything may change, so people are living together. Mnapata mtu ni yetu na spouse wake na maybe house help. So let's be inclusive, let's be intentional in taking care of our babies. I think that's it. I think we are going to close it here. Yes. Yeah, and the community to be involved. I'm being told to teach, to also advocate on the teaching the community to be involved in feeding choices. Yeah, we should be asking questions. And as I said, we need to work together with community health promoters to ensure that the messages reach to the community health units that we have established as a country as part of the primary healthcare networks. But again, we also need to make sure that we are vouching and we are advocating for the integration of nutrition in the primary care networks, where we can have nutrition as a core service in these PCNs. So let's ensure and let's continue with discussions like this so that we can actually make sure that that is actually realized, because bila hii hatutaweza. Yeah, I think that's it. I totally agree. And mothers who are working, mothers need support. We have policies, so we also have laws, the breast milk, the BMS Act. So we also have those policies that support the mother, the workplace, lactations regions and places and such. We need to have better implementation of such. We need to commend companies. There was a time that was a really serious thing, but siku hizi imeisha. Hata nakumbuka there was a time that walikuwa wanasema wataweka breastfeeding chair hapo Kencom, but it never happened. It never saw the light of day. Ilishia tu hapo. That's still a blood donation station. So we need to make sure that we are supporting mothers in as much as we can. For those who are in informal sectors, I know that is where the most challenges, because when you're kwa formal, unapata mtu ako na lunch, ako na tea break, maybe anatoka job, maybe they are allowed to leave earlier. I know some people whose workplace is a bit conducive for breastfeeding moms, but those who are not able to do that in Akwa Shida, people should have stations that are everywhere in the urban and the semi-urban regions where mothers are working, so that they can be able to even express, and if it's possible, the breast milk to be sent to their babies. If it's not, you just express to ensure that you continue lactation. Ukienda nyumbani maziwa bado inapatikana kwa mtoto. So we need to look for better ways to support mothers who are working. That is very important if we are actually to achieve the dream of proper numbers when it comes to breastfeeding and exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months, and complementary feeds and complementary feeding for the first 24 months of life. I think I will end it there. I don't know if we have any other question. Yes, Eunice is back. That was a serious monologue.
I am so sorry. I would have loved to be with you. Something happened in my background I did not understand, but I was in the backstage supporting you, cheering you on. I was answering questions. I think you've covered.
Thank you for that.
Yes, I think the only thing that maybe I could add is the policy and advocacy reforms that we have in the country, which you've talked about some of them. You've talked about the breast milk substitutes code, which the country is really trying their best, but I think sai social media watu wamechangamka sana na hii story. Kuna mpaka sponsorships za breast milk substitutes. I don't know, how is the law working to that, like to see that we are not marketing to our mothers that much. You remember the other time we were talking about yani like the breast, those formula milk iko tu kwa like eye level, ukiingia kwa super ndio inakupata ya kwanza.
Na they are strategically placed hata kwa next to diapers. I think people should be arrested.
Alafu ujue si cheap. Those things are expensive. Yes, so I think sorry.
The funny thing about women, they will say they cannot afford nutrition support. They cannot afford good nutrition for themselves to support breastfeeding, lakini wananunua formula. I'm not judging, but need to.
You see, the problem is, you remember, I think there was a documentary that someone did the other day about how formula was introduced in Africa, and it was very unfortunate because yes, you introduce this formula to these babies, and then you end up diluting them and giving them the way they're not supposed to be given. So unapata malnutrition, unapata diarrhea, infections, because maybe the person that is going to use the formula is not even hana hygiene practices si nzuri. So I think the enforcement, you remember we were talking about having very beautiful policies kwa boardrooms inakuwa discussed, but implementation, I don't know. How do we do? How do we bridge that gap between the policy in the boardroom and enforcement?
We continue talking about it without looking like we are bitter or fighting them. We have to do that.
Yeah. And then I think as also practicing nutritionists, tukue serious na hii act. Don't be putting on clothes, t-shirts that you've been given, promotions, unapata mtu anatumia pen ya, promoting those things. I think sijui kama ninja watu wako nayo, they are sponsored by these companies. I don't know, maybe kwako we mwenyewe fanya kazi yako. Like if you're able to, please don't be enticed by these things. Yeah, and I think
integrity.
Yes, integrity. Let's check our integrity. Alafu, I think someone asked hapo kwa inbox, the MCH booklet, the one that we usually give mothers pale MCH, imeandikwa you introduce one food at a time. I think they wanted clarity on that. Is that right, Rachel? So the question, the simple answer is it's one type of food. Sio like one food. Kama ni protein, usieke protein like nyama na maragwe the same day like fish and beef. What you can do is, the only thing that you need to do is one at a time so that you can check for allergies and intolerances, and then you can continue from there. So I think that is it for my side. Yeah. We can end the discussion.
Yeah, that is true. I agree with you. One at a time to check on reaction and allergy intolerances and such, and then you continue, but imaanisha tujusa leo ulikuwa unampea nyama, umpea any other food. Unampea nyama, but you're giving other sources of foods. You're giving carbohydrates, you're giving the quality fat, be the vegetables. You've just introduced a new protein source so that you can check on allergens. I think that is what Eunice is meaning to say. So yeah, totally agree. Time imeenda. So allow me to hand it over to Eunice. Mimi nilikuwa nishamaliza, atumalizie, and then she tells us what next from here. I hope you're going to continue these conversations because it's necessary and it's very important for us as professionals and as Kenyans as well. Eunice?
No, Lillian, you've done an amazing job. I think we've taken enough time. You've explained everything that we needed to explain today. Maybe we can arrange another session so that we can break down. We can discuss breastfeeding separately, preconception separately, pregnancy separately, and then complementary feeding separately. Because I know there are a lot of misconceptions, myths and misconceptions zimejaa. So maybe we can just close from there. Tumalizie hapo alafu we can arrange with the Nutrition Association of Kenya another time. We are grateful for the opportunity to share the knowledge. Thank you so much, Rachel. Thank you, Milan. Thank you, Lillian. And thank you, everyone. Thank you for your questions. Asanteni sana for your questions. And thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you for staying tuned. And we continue the conversations. Make sure that you follow Nutrition Association of Kenya on all their socials. Wako kila mahali, wako Facebook, wako LinkedIn, wako Twitter, X. And they're also on WhatsApp, by the way. You can also check them out. And pia ukipata time, check us out. I personally talk about nutrition. Eunice does. Sijui alipotelea wapi kidogo, alikuwa ameenda, but I'm positive she's going to be back. So
I will be.
Let's continue the conversation. And thank you for listening to us. Tuage ni usiku. Leo ilikuwa holiday, mashujaa watu wapumzike, kesho watu wako kazi na watu wanaenda shule. Good night, it's good night from me. Thank you for joining in. We appreciate you. And if you have any questions, usisahau acha kwa comment section. They will be answered eventually. So
good night, everybody. Bye.
Good night. End the live.